All right. I am William Moyer, and I am going to do here a little college football playoff prediction. It's been 6 weeks into the season. Some teams have played 5 games, some teams have played 6, and this has been an excellent season of college football so far. There's been lots of upsets, lots of great games, and as well as that, there's always great games, but this season we have the 12-team playoff, and that is obviously this year the first time we're having a 12-team playoff, and it's really exciting. I can't wait. And so basically the rules of this 12-team playoff are that the top 4 conference champions each get a bye for the playoff, and then teams 5 through 12 are just the next 8 best teams in the country that all battle it out, and the winners of those play the top 4, and then it's from there until a program is crowned champion. But like I said, we are 6 weeks through the season, and it's about halfway through. I feel like there's no better time than now to give my playoff prediction. We've pretty much seen how good teams are, seen 5 or 6 games from them, and with that, we kind of know what their strong points are, what their weaknesses are. Obviously, still 6 games to go, plus the conference championship game, so there's a lot still to be played, but I feel like we kind of are starting to know what teams are. But let's get right into it. I'll go from 1 down to 12. The number 1 team, I think, going into the playoff is going to be the Texas Longhorns. The Longhorns currently 5-0. Biggest win so far was a 31-12 win over Michigan at the Big House, and the Longhorns, they're going to have a huge next couple of games. They play Oklahoma this weekend in the Red River rivalry, and then the following week they have to play against the number 5 team in the country, Georgia. So those 2 games are really going to be the first true tests for this Texas team. Michigan, we thought at the beginning of the season that they were going to be a team that's up there competing for the playoff. Seems now that they aren't really going to be one of those teams. But this Texas team, I think, is the best team in the country. They've got Quinn Ewers at quarterback, also Arch Manning, who's been in there the last few games while Quinn Ewers was struggling with an injury. They've got Isaiah Bond transfer in from Alabama, and he has just been incredible. I think this Texas team really has no weaknesses. I think this is the best team in the country, and the only other team that I think really rivals this Texas team is Ohio State, who I have going into the playoff as the number 2 team in the country. I think these are the clear 2 best teams in the country. 2 teams that I don't think really have many weaknesses, none that really stand out. Ohio State improved a lot last season, but also kept a lot of their best players. Brought in Caleb Downs, who is an exceptional defensive back. Brought in Will Howard as a new quarterback for this Ohio State team. And they've got a freshman receiver, Jeremiah Smith, who is just incredible on the season so far. 453 yards and 6 receiving touchdowns in just 5 games. Ohio State, the only thing that does concern me, though, is that they haven't really played anybody. Their biggest wins are these last 2 weeks at Michigan State and then this past week playing Iowa, who are good teams, but this upcoming week, Ohio State also, same as Texas, they have a huge challenge. This Ohio State team has to go on the road to the Oregon Ducks, who are currently ranked 3rd in the AP poll. They'll be facing off against them on Saturday night. That is going to be a must-watch game. The number 2 versus the number 3 teams in the country. I think Ohio State will take care of business in that one. I could talk more about Oregon later, but Ohio State to me is a team that is going to take care of business against Oregon. I think they'll end up undefeated. They also play Penn State on November 2nd, which I think is going to be the toughest challenge for this Ohio State team. I'll talk about Penn State later as well, but I just think this Ohio State team, another team with really no big weaknesses. I think Texas and Ohio State are going to be the two best teams in the country. I think they're going to be the only two teams. Maybe this next team I'll mention. I think those are going to be the only two teams that finish undefeated going into the playoff. And this next team, number 3 team, is going to be the Miami Hurricanes. Miami, so far in the season, 6-0. They had a huge scare this last week against Cal, where Miami had to come back from a 25-point deficit that they were down in the third quarter, 35-10, but Miami able to come back and get the win. Miami is currently the 6th-ranked team in the country, and this Miami team, I think they're going to be the 3rd seed and get that bye, not because they're the 3rd best team in the country, but because I believe that they're going to win the ACC. The only other team I think that is a real threat to them is Clemson. I think if it's not Miami, it's going to be Clemson. Clemson having a nice season so far. They're 4-1. I could talk about them later as well. But I believe that Miami will win the ACC. I think they could definitely go undefeated. They don't have to play Clemson in the regular season. They'll play them probably in the conference championship, depending on how things shake out. But this Miami team, I think, is really good, led by their quarterback Cam Ward, who is a Heisman candidate, and he is just an exceptional quarterback. So top 3 teams, Texas, Ohio State, and Miami. And this 4th bye is something that I'm not super confident about. This 4th bye is probably going to go to the Big 12, and the Big 12 is a conference this year that has a lot of parity. There's not a clear best team in it so far. We've got Iowa State currently ranked 11th in the AP poll. We've got BYU ranked 14th, Utah ranked at 16th, and as well as Kansas State, also a preseason favorite. They're currently ranked 18th. But my pick to win the Big 12 and get the final bye spot in the college football playoff, I think it's going to be BYU. I think it's going to be Brigham Young University. They are currently on the season 5-0, ranked 14th in the country. They've got big wins over SMU, who has proven to be a good team, and they also beat a couple weeks ago Kansas State, who, as well, another favorite in the Big 12 conference. I just think this BYU team is a really strong team. They win games at home. They beat Kansas State, which really impressed me, a 38-9 win against Kansas State. Their toughest game of the season after this in the regular season is going to be Utah, and then we'll see who they have to play in the Big 12 championship. But this BYU team, I'm not confident about this pick, but as of right now, I think they're the best team in the country, and I think their schedule helps them to win the Big 12 and be that 4th seed. And, yeah, BYU. So after this, 5 through 12 is where it really gets kind of weird, because none of these teams are going to be teams that win their conference, besides probably the group of 5 team that gets in. But my number 5 team is the Alabama Crimson Tide. I might be a little biased. I am an Alabama fan. But this Alabama team, I just think they're going to win out and probably lose in the SEC championship to Texas. But with that, I think they would probably have the 5 seed in the college football playoff. Alabama so far, these last 2 weeks have really been a confusing 2 weeks. Alabama beat Georgia 41-34 in the best game I've seen so far this season, one of the best college games I've seen in a while. Alabama got out to a 28-0 lead, and then Georgia came back, took the lead, and then Alabama took it right back after Ryan Williams, who is just one of the best athletes I have ever seen in any sport. Ryan Williams, the wide receiver for the Crimson Tide. Alabama, a very, very strong offense. They've got Jalen Milroe at quarterback, who is one of my favorite quarterbacks, probably my favorite player in college football right now. But the Alabama defense really, really not very strong. the tale of two games is last week Alabama fell to Vanderbilt 40-35. Alabama's defense could not get a stop against a Vanderbilt offense that really had a great game plan led by Diego Pavia, who played a great game, and Alabama really got trapped after beating Georgia, went to Vanderbilt, assumed that it was just going to be an easy game, and that Vanderbilt offense lit the Alabama defense up, made them look silly. So Alabama currently ranked 7th in the AP poll. It's the SEC. They still got to have a really tough rest of the schedule. They play at Tennessee next week, third Saturday in October. Looking forward to that one. And then they play Missouri at LSU, which always a tough one. And then at Oklahoma and Auburn at home. But I think this Alabama offense can lift them to being undefeated throughout the rest of the regular season. They'll have that one Vanderbilt loss, and then I would predict for them to lose in the SEC championship against the Texas Longhorns, and that would put them in the 5th spot in the college football playoff. Team I have to be ranked 6th going into the college football playoff is the Penn State Nittany Lions. Penn State is a team that I'm really high on. I think they have a great team this year. I think Drew Aller is an exceptional quarterback. He's already thrown for 1,000 yards, 9 touchdowns. And this Penn State team, I think they finally have gotten it figured out. They really impressed me week 1 against a West Virginia team who is not an easy team to play against. They did have a close game against Bowling Green, 34-27 win, but I think Bowling Green is a very quality team. And 2 weeks ago, had a good win against Illinois, who is another quality Big Ten team. I do believe Penn State will take a loss in the regular season, though. I think they'll fall to the Ohio State Buckeyes, who I have as the 2nd team in the college football playoff. And I think that'll be their only regular season loss. And, yeah, I just think this Penn State team is really good. I think they have a chance to win the title, to be honest. I think if they can put it together and play some really good games, they'll be able to compete up there with Texas and Ohio State. But they have to play their best game, and I think Ohio State or Texas have to play a subpar game for Penn State to beat them. But of all the teams that are below those two, I think Penn State is up there as one of the best complete teams that is not Ohio State or Texas. So then going into 7th, I am picking the Oregon Ducks. Oregon, they are currently ranked 3rd. There's a lot of people that are really high on them, and I think Oregon's a good team, but to me, I think they're flawed. I think they're going to get beat by Ohio State this weekend, and I think that might be their only loss for the regular season, but I just don't think they can really compete with those great teams. First week, they came out of a game versus Idaho where they only won 24-14. They did not look very impressive to me in that one. And then the week after, they played a Boise State team who I will get to. They are an exciting team. I love this Boise State team. But Oregon, a team who should be one of the best teams in the country, only beat Boise State 37-34, which I don't know if that shows more how good Boise State is or that Oregon is not a top-tier team where they can really win the national championship. I think they're a great team. I think they can win a game here in the playoff. But I don't really see Oregon as a team that can win the title. I think they're going to lose to Ohio State, and that's going to push them down to about 7th is where I think they will end up going into the college football playoff. And then 8th, just mentioned them, the Boise State Broncos. Boise State is having an incredible season so far. They are led by I think he should be the Heisman, their Heisman running back, Ashton Jeanty. Jeanty already with 1,000 yards on the season and 16 touchdowns, and he has not even played the entirety of the 5 games that Boise State has played. He got benched for the second half against Portland State because they were already up enough, and then the same thing happened this past week against Utah State. So this Boise State team currently 4-1, currently second in the Mountain West Conference. but I think Boise State is going to win the Mountain West. I think they're going to be the group of 5 team that is picked going into the playoff, and I think Ashton Jeanty is going to win the Heisman Trophy. He's going to keep going on this record-breaking season that he's had so far. I think they're going to power through the Mountain West Conference. I think they're going to go undefeated in that. Their only loss is going to be that loss I mentioned just a moment ago against Oregon, where they lost 37-34. But this Boise State team, I think they could maybe pull off an upset in the playoff. I don't know if the committee will rank them as the 8th best team in the country going into the playoff, but to me, what they've shown so far, this explosive offense that they have, it's not just Jeanty, this team. They've got a great quarterbacks as well with Maddox Madsen, who has thrown for 1,000 yards so far and 10 touchdowns. This Boise State team is really impressive, and I have them as the 8th team going into the college football playoff. Number 9, I have the Clemson Tigers. Clemson, a team who is currently 4-1 on the year. They suffered a blowout loss against Georgia in the opening game of the season. They lost 34-3, but since then they've been playing pretty well. This Clemson team, I think they could take advantage of the rest of their schedule, where they're the best team that they play for the rest of the season, probably either Louisville or Pitt. Pitt's having a really good year so far. Currently, they are 5-0, ranked 22nd on the AP poll. But this Clemson team, I think they're just getting better every week, and I have them as the number 9 team going into the playoff. I think they will probably lose to Miami in the conference championship game, and that'll drop them down to the 9th spot. But I think they'll finish 11-1 in the regular season, win 11 straight games following that Week 1 loss to Georgia. That is what I think of the Clemson Tigers. And then number 10, I think, is going to be the Georgia Bulldogs. This might be a surprise. I might be ranking them a little bit low, but this Georgia team, I am not super fond of. I haven't really been impressed by them so far. Obviously, they had the loss against Alabama. They've got the win against Clemson. They also played Kentucky a few weeks ago, and they only won that game 13-12. I just think this Georgia team does not have enough weapons offensively to really be a contender. And they also play probably the toughest schedule in college football. They've already played Clemson and Alabama. They played Texas in a couple of weeks. Then they play number 9 Ole Miss. Then they play number 8 Tennessee. I think they're going to lose to Texas and then also probably lose one of those 2 games against Ole Miss or Tennessee. After that, they'll have 3 losses and a 3-loss team to me. Granted, it is Georgia, so I will have them at 10th. I think Carson Beck's still a good quarterback, but I just think they don't have enough weapons offensively at receiver. Trevor Etienne, I'm not super impressed with, but Georgia, they still got the talent. So I have them at 10th going into the playoff. But even at 10th, Georgia could definitely make a run, maybe into the semifinals, or we'll see. And then number 11, I have the Iowa State Cyclones. This Iowa State team currently 5-0 on the year. I think they're probably the second best team in the Big 12. They got a win against Iowa early in the season, and I think we won't really know how good this team is until the last couple of weeks, where they play at Utah and then versus Kansas State in the last 2 weeks of the season. If they can remain undefeated throughout the regular season, I think they could definitely make their way into the playoff, whether it's winning the conference, stealing that 4th spot from BYU, who I think is going to win the Big 12, but Iowa State, I think, is the other best team in that conference. I think both of these 2 teams are going to finish 12-0 in the regular season, and then it's going to be whoever wins the Big 12 championship is who's going to get that 4 seed. I think it's going to be BYU. So Iowa State I have in here as my 11th ranked team. And then 12th, the final team in the college football playoff, I think, is going to be the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. Notre Dame obviously had that terrible loss to Northern Illinois in just the second week of the season, a historic loss for that team. I don't really think this Notre Dame team could win a game going into the playoff. I don't love their schedule. I don't love who they've played, but just going off of predictions, what I think the playoff committee will do, I predict that Notre Dame is going to be the 12th team in the country. I think they've got a good defense. I just think their offense is not good enough. Riley Leonard, I think, is a decent quarterback. I don't love their run game. I just think once they get to the playoff and they play a really quality team, who could be the 5 seed? It could be Alabama, Penn State, Oregon, any of those teams. I think they are going to really get beat there. Notre Dame does have a good win against Texas A&M first week of the season, but I'm just not really convinced by this Notre Dame team. So that would round out my college football playoff prediction. I've got number 1, Texas, number 2, Ohio State, number 3, Miami, number 4, BYU, 5 is Alabama, 6 is Penn State, 7 is Oregon, 8 is Boise State, 9 is Clemson, 10 is Georgia, 11 is Iowa State, and 12 is Notre Dame. So after week 6, those are my predictions for what the 12-team playoff will look like. And thank you for listening.